Hi, I'm Dave from Sailing Laguna. We're doing the whole rent the house out, buy a boat on the other side of the world, and go sailing around the Caribbean thing. Last episode, we had a look around Bequia with its colourful buildings, restaurants, and questionable cultural practices. I then alluded to a quick dash south to Union Island at the southern end of the Grenadines. We had a look at the famous Happy Island and met Charlie Brown before watching a bit of kite surfing at Frigate Island. There was actually a few things to investigate around this area, with a great eco trail that leads through the defunct marina project. Now, back to the whole alluded to thing. While in Bequia, it appeared there was a bit of weather coming towards us. What do you know about hurricanes? We had watched the system develop across the Atlantic for several days. Around 48 hours out, it appeared as though the eye would pass just north of St. Vincent. Most importantly, though, the severe winds were forecast towards the north of the system. Nonetheless, since we were planning on heading south anyway, we thought that there was no better time than the current, and that's how we ended up at Union Island. And luckily so, because 24 hours out, and the hurricane's eye was now forecast to come over Bequia, exactly where we were a day earlier. In Bequia, we actually met up with Monica and Aussie Steve from Wildside Holidays, who run a kite surfing catamaran charters business in the Grenadines. Yeah, I was jealous. Anyway, they suggested the area of Frigate Island. Frigate has a number of options. So, firstly, I looked at the marina bays. Now, most catamarans could get in here, but you may want to tie off to the bank in certain locations because there isn't much room if you start dragging. The second option to avoid a hurricane is up in the bay, and I tested the depths with my paddle the day before and found that it was about 1.2 metres deep at high tide, which is actually the exact depth of our boat. If it was a severe hurricane, I actually would try and get up into this bay and deal with the issues of getting out a little later. But look, Elsa wasn't predicted to be that bad. So we went with the third option of staying on the mooring. As you can see, I added some backup ropes in case the main line snapped, but it did look like the mooring was in good condition. And then, of course, by the time the day actually arrived, Hurricane Elsa was headed straight for us. The prediction had moved further south again, with the eye passing directly over us. But it's still okay. The severe winds occur to the north of the eye, as you can see, which in this example means that Bequia is going to cop a little bit of a flogging from the winds.
Oh my god, oh my god, the hurricane's hitting! Help, abandon the ship! Oh!
Look, dead cat in.
Okay. Oh, right, so now you got the dead cat in. Alright, well this could be the first signs that the hurricane is coming. It's now, tropical storm is now Hurricane Elsa. So yep, it's officially a hurricane. So that's kind of a good thing, kind of bad. At least we can say we've been through a hurricane, bad because the winds might come. But yeah, we're expecting it to go to the north, which is what we were looking for here. And so now we're just waiting for the winds to pick up and for the rain to start, and then we'll know that the hurricane is really starting to hit us. Alright, well, winds have picked up a little bit here. We've never actually got the strong breezes from the north. We have got a large land mass here. Well, it's not large, but it's a significantly high, I guess, land mass. Maybe it was blocking some of the northerly winds because we only got about 10 knots. It's now come all the way from the west. Now we're pointing southwest. We're now getting 20 knots of breeze here, but 20 knots is really not significant at all. It's also 2 hours before Predict Wind was predicting to actually have this occur. So I don't know whether the cyclone or the hurricane is actually now passed, and we're just seeing the aftermath of it now. If so, then conditions are a lot lighter than what they were predicted. So I guess that's kind of good. Anyway, let's see what happens over the next hour.
And well, so this is all we received from Hurricane Elsa. After a couple of hours, the winds moved back to the east, which actually became quite uncomfortable because the swell was still coming from the southeast. So we actually ended up moving into the abandoned marina area to seek shelter from those waves.
So it's blowing maybe 25 knots at the moment. To be expected. We're obviously rocking about a little bit here. Again, as to be expected. The theory was, going onto a mooring that's exposed to these southwesterly winds, that, all right, we're going to rock, but we're not going to drag with this mooring, which is far better than being in those hidey holes back there where we won't rock, but we might drag. So anyway, we'll probably have these conditions now for another hour. The hurricane is already moving west of St. Vincent, so it's already going away from us now. So hopefully we have weathered this hurricane. Yay!
Now, if you've made it this far, then you might be interested as to why we're actually in the hurricane belt in hurricane season. A couple of videos ago, we made our way further south in the Caribbean because hurricane season officially started a month ago on June 1. June hurricanes have traditionally formed in the Western Caribbean or up the US East Coast. In July, there is a possibility of hurricane formation, and in the Eastern Caribbean, and Elsa was actually one of the first to form in that area at this time of year. But it's not until August where the likelihood of a hurricane in this region really increases significantly. Nonetheless, our Pantaneous insurance does not cover us against hurricanes as of June 1. We are covered at other times, but just not during a hurricane. Now, this means that technically we wouldn't be allowed in a marina because we'd have no hurricane insurance. And if we were to damage another boat while we're in there during a hurricane, well, I don't want to be paying for that. Several people we talked to said Sandy Lane Marina, which is in this area, it was a good spot for hurricane protection, but it offers protection mainly from the swell and not so much from the winds. Anyway, the only way we would be covered against a hurricane was if we were south of 12 degrees. In other words, in Trinidad and Tobago. But it was currently COVID closed. We could potentially seek safe shelter in their waters if a hurricane came through, but that was not our primary plan. Our plan is very simple: move out of the road of hurricanes. And, well, we're also going to position ourselves in Grenada for hurricane season. While Grenada has had a hurricane before, the likelihood is rather small. And as another backup, one of the first things I did when I got to Grenada was to check out a local hurricane hole called Ergmont Harbour, so that if I did have to seek shelter in Grenada, then I had a pretty reasonable knowledge of the position I would take. And so that's our hurricane plan. Comment below if you have any questions or points on that.
Hey Kubi, what's going on?
The boat just ran aground.
And what are the other two boats, smaller boats, trying to do?
Port 3.
Yeah.
Just did. One of them's dad.
Because this
Black one.
catamaran ran aground this morning coming out of the little bay that they took shelter in for Hurricane Elsa yesterday. And they got in okay last night, or yesterday, sorry, but this morning when they're trying to get out, they've come aground, and Dave went over in our tender, but the engine's not very big, and the other local orange boat came, and now another bigger tender from another catamaran has just arrived to try and get some more engine power.
5 minutes now.
Yeah, there they go.
At least the orange one.
Might have hit ground again.
So there was a few factors that helped these guys get into the bay. They came in just after the hurricane, so maybe the air pressure was lower, which helps to increase the water height.
There they go.
They also came in at high tide, and there was a breeze blowing into the bay, which may have added a little bit more to the water height, kind of like a mini storm surge.
Ooh, there they go.
Clearly though, without the low air pressure or the wind for the mini storm surge, even though they're using their GPS track that they came in on, then yeah, they're still having difficulties getting out. Now, in hindsight, I've got some advice here. If you're stuck, spend 10 minutes finding and marking, with a buoy or something, the deepest path out. and that's found by physically testing the depths. Don't trust someone's depth sounder, and take locals' advice with a grain of salt. Some of them don't really know what they're talking about, so just be warned. Of course, try to decrease the mass of the boat by lowering the tender and getting any extra people off the boat. Jerry cans, anything that's heavy, really get it off the boat because every centimetre will make a difference in this case.
Alrighty, so here they go again. It's pivoting, but that port side is still a bit out of the water at the stern. Oh, here we go. Go, go, go. So we're glad that we didn't come right into the bay last night for shelter. After the Hurricane Elsa passed us, so we sat out over there with the other catamaran and monohull last night, up until last night, through the hurricane. And then once the after swell of the hurricane started coming in, which was really quite bad, we moved in just a little bit further into shallower water where the swell doesn't seem to be so bad. But these guys on this cat went all the way in to the bay, and it's renowned to be quite shallow. But nonetheless, they're out now.
Why that's his coat.
Alright, so I take the chemical, a little spoonful of chemical, and then I put the chemical on the coin. You just douse it, and then I empty the chemical there, and then what do I do, Cooper? I clean here to get the chemical off. Alright, and then now we've got the...
So are you mixing chemicals in there?
Yep. That's just all the overflow.
Is that a good idea, Mr. Science Teacher?
Oh, it might turn us into the Hulk. Oh. No.
So let's hope there's no major reaction going on.
Look at the muriatic acid. I think the muriatic acid is okay. And where's the Coke? All right, Mummy, can we have a little bit of Coke?
Coca-Cola. But I still like
Okay, so which one do you think has worked the best, boys?
Probably this one.
The muriatic acid.
Look at that.
Yeah. On our trip south to avoid Elsa, we missed a couple of must-dos. So before we left the Grenadines, we had a look around Tobago Keys, which looked really nice. It's a bit like the Bahamas actually, but it was rather exposed to the trade winds, so if you are in this area, look for a calm day. We also checked out Saltwhistle Bay, which offered good protection from the swell and is certainly worth staying the night for its beachside restaurants. Our final night, however, was spent in Chatham Bay, another pretty idyllic location which had a little boutique hotel on its shores, although it currently didn't have any guests. Chatham also has a Sunset Cove bar at the northern end, where we had a few drinks with some other kid boats. While we were wandering around, we found some wildlife that was actually stuck in a water feature next to the pool. We had to get a pool scoop and get the poor little fella out so he didn't starve to death in there.
And Dave, amazingly, is about to save the life of a rat.
Well, you made a hole with this rope that was stolen. What is that exactly?
Dave, I think it's half dead anyway.
It's bound to be half alive.
In the water. Nope, nope.
Now what are you going to do with it?
Chatham Bay also provided a good spot to take some nice photos of the boat. Once we reached Grenada, we'd be putting it up for sale. Although we haven't completed an entire year on board, we have reached our southernmost destination, and with the passing of both of Sam's parents, well, I'm sure you understand why we're heading home. And so, yeah, basically this brings Sam's and the kids' time in the Caribbean to an end. We checked in at Grenada for our 7-day quarantine period on the boat, one of the first quarantine periods we've actually had to do this whole year. We should have checked out of SVG a few days earlier and sailed around for a few days to shorten up the quarantine period, but that's a discussion for another time as well. After checking into Grenada, we spent 7 days in quarantine and got told on our last day that our COVID test results were inconclusive. They had to be done again. And we had to remain in quarantine until day 10 when the results came back. The real bummer about this is that we lost the 3 days that Sam and the kids were going to use to explore Grenada. We eventually checked them in at 10:30 a.m. and we had 2 hours to make our way to the airport before they had to get on their flights back to Australia. But it gets worse for them. After 10 days in quarantine in Grenada, Sam, Cooper and Campbell flew back to Australia and had to complete 14 days in hotel quarantine. We paid around 5 times the normal cost for a flight from LA to Sydney and then paid around $4,000 for hotel quarantine. She then waited for Australia to lift the restrictions on funerals so that she could put her mother to rest. Not exactly how we wanted to finish her time on the boat. And so this really starts to bring us closer to the end. I will do a video at the very end about costs and what things went well and what things didn't and stuff like that about our time on board. And so that was it for their Caribbean adventures. So join me next time as I become a solo sailor, I guess, and I give you a little bit of a look around Grenada and take you on a few different random trips. Anyway, catch you then.